My name is Kinley, and right now I'm juggling a high-pressure marketing manager job while making sure my little brother has everything he needs. The paycheck covers it all. No complaints there. But the real headache isn't the workload, it's the four of us crammed into a one-bedroom apartment in Milwaukee that I pay for every month. At Thanksgiving dinner, my stepdad slammed his fork down and barked, "I can't stand living in this tiny apartment anymore." Then he looked straight at me and said, "You need to leave tonight." I packed 2 bags, grabbed my brother, and walked out the door. A month later, everything they had fell apart. If you've ever been pushed out by the people who were supposed to have your back, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss how it all unfolded. Thanksgiving evening, 6 o'clock sharp, the smell of roasted turkey filled the cramped apartment. I had spent the entire afternoon stuffing the bird-whipping potatoes and wrestling a folding table into the narrow gap between the couch and the kitchen counter. Finally, everyone sat down, me perched on the sofa arm plates, wobbling on our knees since the table barely held 4. My stepdad Earl cleared his throat and jabbed his fork into the meat. He had been muttering about the tight quarters all week, but tonight he unloaded. "This place is a joke," he announced, voice climbing. "4 people jammed in here like canned fish, and it's because somebody hogs every inch." His glare landed on me, the one who unfolded the sofa bed every single night. I kept carving my slice, forcing steady breaths. My mom, Helen, spoke up before I could. "Kinley, you're 32, she said, resting a hand on Earl's forearm. "You're an adult. It's only fair you give your parents some room to breathe." She offered a tight smile, as if suggesting I clear the dishes instead of uprooting my life. My little brother Boone squirmed in his seat, bursting to talk. "In school today he began, but Earl flicked a hand. "Zip it, kid. Grown-ups are speaking." Boone's shoulders slumped. He stared at his plate and rolled a pea back and forth. Earl leaned in, elbows knocking the gravy boat. "Bottom line, this apartment is too small for 4. It's suffocating because one extra body claims the whole living room after dark." The accusation sat heavy, aimed squarely at me. I laid my fork down and met his eyes. "What are you really saying, Earl?" My voice stayed level, though my pulse hammered. He had dropped hints before, but never this openly at the dinner table. He huffed and flung his napkin aside. "I'm saying I can't take this dump anymore. The walls close in because your junk is everywhere. Clothes in the hall, papers on the counter, suitcase blocking the path." He waved at the compact bag I kept tucked under the couch for morning outfit swaps. Helen nodded in agreement. "He's right, sweetie. We're family, but space is scarce. Maybe pack some things away." Her tone was gentle, like requesting salt instead of dismantling my routine. Boone tried once more, barely audible. "But Kinley sleeps on the couch." "Where else?" Earl's sharp glance silenced him. The boy shrank, eyes wide. Heat crawled up my neck, but I swallowed it. "I cover this apartment," I stated quietly. "Rent, power, water, even Boone's notebooks and lunch money. If it's unbearable, why hasn't anyone stepped up?" The words cut through the steam. Earl's cheeks flushed crimson. "I'm retired. I earned my downtime. Helen's job hunting. Money's short." He avoided my stare, sawing off another chunk of turkey. Helen exhaled. "We're grateful, truly, but gratitude doesn't stretch square footage." She laced her fingers with Earl's, a solid team. Boone murmured, "I want Kinley here," but the adults ignored him. Tension coiled thicker than the gravy while faint holiday tunes leaked through the wall from next door. Earl shoved his chair back. The legs screeched across linoleum. "This isn't a boarding house. It's our home, and it feels like a prison with all the clutter." He nudged my laptop case near the door with his foot. "Change has to happen." I rose slowly, stacking plates to steady myself. "So what's the plan?" I asked, sliding dishes into the sink that barely accommodated 2 elbows. He folded his arms. "You tell me." "But I'm finished acting like this works." The statement rang out sharp and final, just as the oven buzzer sounded for the untouched pumpkin pie. A week after that dinner, things escalated fast. Boone had been counting down to Saturday for months. He finally got tickets through school to watch a local basketball game with me. We planned snacks, jerseys, the whole thing. But Friday night, Earl snatched the tickets off the fridge and crumpled them in his fist. "No way you're wasting a weekend on that," he told Boone, tossing the pieces into the trash. "We need the car for errands, and I'm not driving you around." Boone's eyes welled up immediately, but he didn't argue. He just slipped into the bathroom and locked the door. The next morning, Earl claimed the corner where Boone usually did homework, a small desk I'd squeezed against the wall with a lamp for late-night studying. He dragged his recliner over and planted himself there to watch football reruns, volume blasting. "Move your books," he barked when Boone tried to sit. "I need this spot today." I stepped in from the kitchen, drying my hands. "That's Boone's study area, Earl. He has a test Monday." Earl didn't even look up from the screen. "He can use the floor. Plenty of room down there." Mom walked in carrying laundry and sighed at the standoff. "Kinley, you're making a big deal out of nothing. It's just a sofa corner." She folded a towel and set it on the pile. "Let him watch his game in peace." Boone hovered nearby, clutching his backpack. I knelt to his level. "We'll find another way for the game, okay?" But Earl overheard and laughed. "Find another way? With what money you act like you're loaded." That pushed me over the edge. I straightened up. "Actually, my salary tops what you ever brought home driving trucks, Earl. Marketing pays well when you climb the ladder." The room went silent except for the TV announcer droning on. Helen dropped the laundry basket, her mouth open. "You earn more than him. Why didn't you say something sooner?" Shock mixed with something sharper in her voice. Earl muted the television and stood face darkening. "Big shot now, huh? Throwing numbers around like it matters here." He pointed at me. "Doesn't change the fact you're just a boarder crashing our family space." He turned to Boone, who had frozen by the desk. "Hear that, kid? Your sister thinks she's the boss because she pays the bills. But boarders don't get to call shots." The word boarder landed like a slap, especially in front of Boone. Boone's lip trembled. "She's not a boarder. She's my sister." His voice cracked and tears spilled over. He dropped his backpack and ran to the bathroom again, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I followed and knocked softly. "Boone, open up." Sobs echoed from inside, muffled but heartbreaking. Earl yelled over the noise. "Let him cry it out. He'll learn who runs things." Mom picked up the basket again, avoiding my eyes. "You didn't have to brag about money, Kinley. It only makes everything worse." She carried the clothes to the bedroom, leaving me in the hallway. Earl unmuted the TV and settled back into the recliner, reclaiming the desk like a throne. "See, even your mom agrees. Boarders should know their place." I stood there, fists clenched, listening to Boone cry behind the locked door. The apartment felt smaller than ever, but not because of furniture. It was the weight of words piling up, crushing the air out of the room. Later that evening, while Boone pretended to sleep on the couch, Earl whispered loudly to Mom in the kitchen. "She thinks cash gives her power. Time to remind her who this home belongs to." I overheard from my spot on the floor, packing Boone's books away to make space for Earl's remote. Mom replied, "Just be patient. She'll come around." But her tone lacked conviction, and Boone shifted under his blanket, eyes squeezed shut. The next day, Earl posted a sticky note on the fridge border rules. "No loud calls after 9, keep belongings in one bag." He said it aloud at breakfast, so Boone heard every word. My brother stared at his cereal spoon untouched. I peeled the note off and crumpled it. "This isn't a dorm, Earl." He smirked. "Exactly my point." Boone finally spoke up, voice shaky. "Stop calling her that." Earl ruffled his hair roughly. "Grow up, kid. Families have hierarchy." That night, Boone crawled onto my air mattress on the floor and whispered, "I hate when he says boarder." I held him until he fell asleep, the TV still blaring from the corner that used to be his desk. That same night, after Boone fell asleep, Earl slammed his palm on the kitchen counter so hard the salt shaker jumped. "I can't take this hole anymore." He roared, veins bulging in his neck. You get out tonight." The command sliced through the quiet, aimed directly at me like a thrown knife. Mom burst into tears, hands covering her face. "Just go Kinley out of my sight," she sobbed between hiccups, collapsing onto a stool. Her words stung worse than Earl's shout, twisting the knife deeper. I said nothing. Words felt pointless now. I walked to the closet, pulled out my largest duffel and started folding clothes. Work blazers first, then jeans, underwear, toiletries. 30 minutes on the dot. I timed it on my phone to keep my hands steady. The zipper closed with a final hiss. A small creak from the hallway made me turn. Boone stood in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes, tears already streaming. "Don't leave me," he whimpered, voice breaking. He lunged forward and wrapped his arms around my waist, face buried in my shirt. I knelt and hugged him tight. "I'll take you with me," I whispered into his hair, feeling his nods against my shoulder. No hesitation, he grabbed his backpack, stuffed in a few toys and schoolbooks, then slipped on his sneakers. Earl paced the living room, muttering about finally getting peace. Mom stayed on the stool, crying into a dish towel, not looking up. I slung my bag over one shoulder, Boone's hand in mine, and headed for the door. The clock on the microwave read 11 sharp. We stepped into the hallway, the door clicking shut behind us without a slam, just final. Boone clutched my hand tighter as we descended the stairs, his small suitcase bumping each step. The building's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows. At the entrance, a brown UPS truck idled curbside. The UPS guy, Nash, hopped out with a late-night package, clipboard in hand. He spotted us, two figures with luggage under the dim street lamp, and paused. "Everything all right here?" he asked, eyebrows raised at Boone's tear-streaked face. I managed a nod. "We're fine, just heading out." Nash glanced at the apartment number on his scanner, then back at us. He didn't push, but handed over a signature pad anyway for a different delivery. "Rough night, huh?" he said quietly while I signed. Boone leaned against me, silent. Nash loaded the box inside the lobby, then returned. "Need a lift somewhere? Truck's empty after this." His offer hung simple, no judgment. I shook my head. "Got a plan. Thanks, though." We exchanged a quick look. He understood. Nash climbed back, an engine rumbling as he pulled away. Boone and I walked to the corner bus stop, suitcases in tow. The night air carried a chill, but his hand stayed warm in mine. A taxi slowed nearby. I flagged it down. The driver popped the trunk without questions. We loaded up and slid into the back seat. As the cab pulled from the curb, Boone pressed his forehead to the window. "Will we ever come back?" he asked, voice small. I squeezed his shoulder. "Not to that place." The driver glanced in the rear view. "Hotel or address?" I gave him the name of a short-stay motel 10 miles away, affordable, clean, with 2 beds. Boone rested his head on my lap as city lights blurred past. Halfway there, my phone buzzed, Mom's name flashing. I let it ring to voicemail. Then Earl's number. Same. Boone watched the screen go dark. "They're mad," he said. "Let them be," I replied, stroking his hair. The cab meter ticked steadily, marking distance from the life we just left. We arrived at the motel just past midnight. The clerk checked us in quickly, cash for one night, no ID questions. Room 12 smelled like bleach and stale coffee, but the beds looked soft. Boone dropped his bag and crawled under the covers, fully clothed. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the peeling wallpaper. 32 years old, starting over with a 12-year-old in tow. The weight settled, but so did resolve. Boone's voice drifted over. "Thanks for taking me." I lay beside him, pulling the blanket up. Always. Outside, a semi rumbled past on the highway, headlights sweeping the curtains. Sleep came slow, but it came. 2 days after leaving, I signed a lease on a compact 1-bedroom near my office, close enough for a quick commute, and within walking distance of a decent middle school. The landlord handed over keys after a credit check. I paid first month's rent in cash from my emergency fund. Boone carried his backpack, inside eyes scanning the empty space that suddenly felt huge compared to before. I enrolled him the same afternoon. The registrar processed transfers smoothly. New records. New start. Boone gripped my hand as we left the building. Different lockers this time, he said, managing a small smile. We stopped for groceries on the way back. Simple stuff like cereal and peanut butter to stock the bare cabinets. My phone started vibrating nonstop that evening. Mom's name lit the screen first. I answered on the third ring. "Pay the rent or we're getting evicted," she yelled, voice frantic over background noise of Earl shouting at the TV. The landlord left a notice today. I leaned against the kitchenette counter watching Boone unpack his toys. "I don't live there anymore," I replied calmly. "Handle it yourselves." The line went quiet for a beat. "You can't just abandon us." Mom pleaded, tone shifting to desperation. "We're family." I ended the call and blocked notifications temporarily to focus on dinner mac and cheese from a box Boone's favorite. Earl rang next, using Mom's phone. I picked up out of curiosity. "No apology from me?" he barked right away. "You need to come back and fix this mess you made." His demand echoed like an order, not a request. I stirred the pot on the stove. "Not happening, Earl. Find another solution." He launched into a rant about responsibility, but I cut him off mid-sentence and hung up. Boone looked over from the table. "Was that them?" "Yeah," I said, serving plates. "Eat up." He nodded and dug in without another word. Later, while Boone showered, I opened my banking app. Auto transfers for rent and utilities set up years ago when I moved in still active. I paused, each one, fingers steady on the screen. Rent canceled, electric off, water stopped. All bills switched to my new address overnight. The confirmations pinged one by one. No more outflows to the old place. I closed the app and set the phone face down. Boone emerged in fresh pajamas, hair damp. "I don't want to go back there," he announced, climbing onto the couch that doubled as his bed for now. "Good, because we're not," I assured him, tucking a blanket around his shoulders. He fell asleep within minutes, the steady rise of his chest the only sound in the quiet room. Morning brought more calls, Mom again, then Earl from a neighbor's line. I let them roll to voicemail. One message from Mom. "The power's out already. How could you?" Another from Earl. "This is cruel. Turn it back on." I deleted both without reply. At work, I focused on campaigns, but lunchtime brought a text from an unknown number, Earl borrowing someone's phone. "Come home tonight or else." I archived it and grabbed sandwiches for Boone's new lunchbox. After picking him up from school, we walked the neighborhood. He pointed out a park nearby. "Can we play catch later?" I promised we would, buying a cheap glove set at a corner store. That night, the phone stayed silent for the first time. I transferred Boone's allowance directly to a kid's account. I opened his name only. No more filtering through anyone else. Boone sat cross-legged on the floor, building a model car from a kit. "They'll run out of money soon," he observed matter-of-factly, snapping pieces together. "Let them figure it out," I said, joining him on the carpet. We worked side by side until the streetlights flickered on outside the window. By the end of the week, I had furniture basics delivered: bunk beds for space, a small table. Boone chose the top bunk. "Feels like camping," he grinned, climbing the ladder. I watched him settle in, the weight of decisions lifting slightly. The old apartment's problems were no longer mine to solve. 3 weeks after I left the lobby, phone rang while I was prepping for a client pitch. Reception patched the call through, "Your family is here, causing a scene." I excused myself from the meeting and rushed downstairs, while Boone waited upstairs in after-school care. Earl and my mother stormed into the marble lobby, Earl waving a crumpled envelope like it was proof of something. "This girl abandoned her own mother," he shouted at the security desk, his voice echoing off the glass walls. People turned to stare, colleagues froze mid-stride. My mother spotted me coming down the stairs and pointed dramatically. "Everyone look, she left us on the street." Her voice boomed, prompting several people to pull out their phones to record. Boone peeked out from the childcare door on the mezzanine, eyes wide with panic. The moment my feet hit the lobby floor, Earl charged toward the seating area. "Where's my son?" he barked, scanning the room. Boone darted past the caregiver and rushed to my side, clutching my sleeve. Tears welled the instant he saw Earl up close. Earl locked on and reached forward. "Come home with your father, boy." He grabbed Boone's wrist and yanked hard enough to make him stumble. Boone jerked his hand back, face scrunched. "I hate you," Boone's screamed, voice cracking through the lobby. "You only yell and ruin everything." All noise seemed to vanish. Even the coffee machine felt louder than the room. Mike, the security guard with the shiny badge, rushed over. "Sir, release the child," he ordered, placing a firm hand on Earl's shoulder. Earl shoved once, but Mike didn't budge. Another guard came and guided my mother toward the doors. "Let me go," Earl thrashed. "She's brainwashing that boy." My mother sobbed, clutching her purse like a shield. Mike radioed for backup while escorting them outside. I knelt beside Boone, wiping his tears. "It's okay now." He buried his face against my blazer's shoulders, trembling. Coworkers murmured but kept their distance. The lobby slowly cleared. Through the glass, Earl pounded on the door. "This isn't over." Mike locked it and stood guard inside. My mother slumped on the steps, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Back upstairs, I settled Boone in the break room with a juice box. My boss poked his head in. "Take the afternoon if you need it." I nodded in thanks and opened my laptop. I typed an email to my attorney, brief and factual. Subject: harassment notice. Body: Earl and Helen Klein arrived at my workplace uninvited, caused a disturbance, attempted to remove minor child Boone Harper. Demand immediate cessation of contact or further legal action will follow. I attached time-stamped lobby security footage. The lawyer responded within minutes, sending certified letter today. Filed. I forwarded the chain to HR and shut my laptop. Boone sipped quietly. "Will they come to school?" I reassured him they wouldn't. New safety protocols were already in place. He nodded slightly and leaned against me. The rest of the day passed in meetings, but my mind felt clearer. No more surprise visits. The boundaries were drawn in ink. 1 month after I left, the eviction notice hit their door. Earl sold his pickup, the one he babied for years, to cover back rent and late fees. The buyer drove off with it the same afternoon, leaving Earl standing in the parking lot, keys dangling from an empty hand. From then on, he rode the city bus everywhere, clutching a transfer slip like a lifeline. Mom took a waitress job at a 24-hour diner on the edge of town. She pulled double shifts, apron stained with coffee and grease, feet aching in worn sneakers. Tips barely covered groceries. Arguments erupted nightly over who spent what. Earl blamed her for not fighting harder with the landlord. She fired back about his refusal to look for work. The thin walls of the apartment amplified every word until neighbors banged on doors for quiet. 2 weeks later, the sheriff showed up. They had 48 hours to vacate. Earl dragged boxes to the curb while Mom stuffed clothes into trash bags. The manager changed the locks behind them. They loaded what fit into a rented storage unit and checked into a cut-rate motel off the interstate, faded sign, hourly rates vending machine humming in the hall. I heard none of this directly. I had blocked their numbers the day after the office incident. Changed email passwords, updated bank alerts, forwarded mail to a P.O. box. No texts, no voicemails, no surprise visits. Complete radio silence. Boone thrived in the new routine. He aced his first math quiz at the new school, joined the robotics club, and started calling me his hero during bedtime talks. "You saved us," he said one night, building a Lego tower taller than his head. I ruffled his hair and let the word settle. Hero felt earned. Now, 6 months later, our one-bedroom feels like home. Framed photos line the shelf. Boone at science fair, us at the lake last summer. My promotion came through. Marketing director, bigger paycheck, flexible hours. Boone's report card hangs on the fridge with straight A's. He outgrew 2 pairs of shoes, already voice cracking on certain words. Earl and Mom faded into background noise I never tuned into. A mutual acquaintance mentioned the motel once peeling paint shared bathroom down the hall. Earl took odd jobs fixing lawnmowers. Mom still waited tables. Their fights reportedly moved to the parking lot, some nights headlights sweeping thin curtains. Boone asked about them exactly once. Do they miss us? I considered the question over breakfast cereal. Maybe, but missing isn't fixing. He nodded satisfied and asked for seconds. I never looked back with regret. The apartment key on my chain opens only our door now. Bills arrive in my name alone. Groceries fill cabinets we stock together. Evenings mean homework at the table, movie nights on the couch that folds out only when guests visit. The lesson crystallized over time, sharp and simple: never let anyone exploit your kindness. True family values you, not evicts you. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors you control. To everyone who listened to the end, thank you for sticking with the story. If it hit close to home, drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you set boundaries with family? How did it change things? Share below. Your experiences might help someone else find their own door.